My name is Jason Higgins. I'm a Ph.D. candidate in American History at UMass Amherst. I'm in Philadelphia at the Center for Criminal Justice. Joining me today is Timothy J. Wynn. This interview is part of the Incarcerated Veterans Oral History Project. Tim, thank you for joining me today and for your willingness to share your story.
My pleasure.
Before we get started, I just want to make sure, I know you've signed informed consent, but do I have permission to record this?
Absolutely.
Great. And then we'll get started with some brief background information, and then we'll just start, who are your parents? For example.
Okay.
So can you tell me when and where you were born?
I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on December 30th, 1979.
And which branch of the military did you serve?
I served in the United States Marine Corps.
And do you recall your dates of service?
May 10th, 1999 to July 26th, 2003.
Great, thank you. And what was your highest rank?
E5, which is a sergeant.
And did you serve in a combat zone?
I did. I served in Iraq in 2003 for the initial invasion.
Any medals you care to mention?
National Defense NUC, which is a Navy Unit Commendation Medal. Trying to think what else. Global War on Terrorism Memorial, Iraq Campaign Medal. There's a couple more.
Heart?
No Purple Heart. I was not wounded, no.
And what was the status of your discharge?
Honorable.
Great. Have you ever been diagnosed with PTSD?
I have been diagnosed with PTSD, yes.
Do you have a percentage on that?
I do. I'm a 100% disabled vet from the VA.
And are you retired?
I am not retired, not medically retired, no.
And you've been incarcerated, correct?
I have, yes.
Do you care to mention what your charges were?
I had 7 arrests after coming back from Iraq. I've had everything from aggravated assault to violations of probation, terroristic threats, simple assault, reckless endangerment. Spent a year of my life in the county jail in Philadelphia, and numerous years on probation and parole.
Thank you very much. Let's step back. Tell me about your parents. Who were they?
My parents were, I was raised by a single mother. She just passed away in February, actually.
My condolences.
Thank you. And yeah, I was raised, it was me, my mother, and my sister growing up. I had great family surrounding me, even though I've never met my dad. It's kind of crazy, he actually reached out to me after my mother passed, after all these years. He reached out to me, found me on social media, which is kind of crazy. But I ignored him. Yeah, but I mean, we had a happy, healthy life. I grew up in an Irish Catholic family. I went to Catholic school, and it was a good life.
Were you the older brother?
I'm the younger brother. I have an older sister.
Okay, great. And what was it like going to a Catholic school?
It was good. I mean, it was discipline. It was structure. It was everything that I'm sure my mom wanted me to get out of life, and it made me the person. Gave me morals. It gave me a foundation, so it was good.
Great. And you might have mentioned this. Did your mom work for a living? She
did. She actually worked for Conrail, which is a railroad company. She was a railroad employee for several years.
That's a decent job.
And yeah, she eventually she was bought out by Conrail. Conrail was bought out by another company, and my mom actually lost her job. They gave her severance pay, and that happened shortly after I joined the Marine Corps, and she wound up going on Social Security and stuff like that. So
working class.
Yeah, working class for sure.
Sure. Working class neighborhood too.
Absolutely, it was. Most people in my neighborhood and the Irish community were roofers. Carpenters, stuff like that. It was, very working class.
Did you enjoy education?
No, I hated school.
Given any behavioral problems or anything like that?
A little bit. I wouldn't say I wasn't, the guy that was in the principal's office every day, but, I wasn't the guy that was on the top of the honor roll or the head of the class. I was an average kid. I didn't enjoy schoolwork. I didn't enjoy doing homework. my mom stayed on me. She had a tough job trying to raise his son, but she did a good job of it. So.
What did kids do for fun in your neighborhood?
Philly's is a sports town, man. So we were out on the streets, until the street light came on. We played street hockey, we played football, basketball, stickball, wire ball, all kinds of games. True Philly games. Step ball, stuff like that. So
Okay.
played manhunt and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Sounds like a pretty good childhood.
yeah, it was fun.
A pretty tough neighborhood, though.
Yeah, definitely. It was the street that I grew up on. At the corner there was a bar, and then there was another street to the left, and on that corner there was a bar. So I grew up in between two bars, as you can imagine, working class neighborhood. Everybody's dad was in the bar. After work, there was always some street fights or something going on. It was a tough neighborhood. So, but
And I always ask this to veterans, especially people who've been incarcerated. In hindsight, would you describe your childhood as traumatic in any way?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It was it was a tough neighborhood. There was a housing project a couple blocks up from where I lived, and they were always coming down, and there was gang violence in my neighborhood. Different neighborhoods fighting each other, and I lived on the main street in our neighborhood, which was Tarsdale Ave, and everything seemed to happen right out there on the avenue. So from my front window, I got to witness a lot of craziness. So
I grew up in Arkansas.
yeah,
We had our problems, but it wasn't like Philadelphia.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I can use my imagination though.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about your path to the Marine Corps.
I graduated high school. Well, I went to a Catholic high school up until my junior year, and then I was asked to leave the high school for, I was getting in fights, stuff like that. And they said, your grades are terrible. You might do better somewhere else. Was their kind way of telling me to get the hell out of here.
Right.
So I wound up going down the street to the public high school, and to be honest with you, I cut school a lot, and they were like, you know what, you're done here too. So I wound up going to a school called Northeast Preparatory School, which was like a night school. My mom paid for me to get into there, and I graduated high school. And then I'm like, well, now what am I going to do? And I thought to myself, well, I need a challenge in my life. I need, wasn't really the college material. I don't know if you can believe that or not, but I said, you know what, I'm going to go in the military. And I took the ASVAB test, which is the entry test to get in the military with the Army. And I took it, and that day I got home, my phone rang, the landline in our house, and it was a Marine Corps recruiter. He must have been waiting in the bushes outside, because he called me and was like, I saw you took the ASVAB test, and don't join the Army yet. Talk to me first. He said, I'll be at your house in 15 minutes. So he shows up in front of my house in a government vehicle, and he's wearing a pair of dress blues. I forgot about the Army. I said, I want a pair of them. That's the sharpest uniform I ever seen. I need to get me a set of those. So the rest is history. I actually started talking to a Marine Corps recruiter. I went down to not far from here at the courthouse to 13th and Broad and Cherry. It used to be the MEPS station there. And I swore in to the Marine Corps, and I called my mom from a payphone outside of the place. And I said, Mom, I just joined the Marine Corps. And she started to cry. And she said, well, when are you leaving? And I said, well, 4 o'clock this afternoon. They said, I can get on a plane. And she started crying harder. And, and there I was. I got first time ever out of Philadelphia, first time on an airplane. I flew down south, and I wound up going to Parris Island, South Carolina. Went through boot camp, got out of there.
Did you have any family influences that directed you toward that?
Everybody in my family was Army. Most of them were drafted. Well, pretty much all of them were drafted.
Vietnam
era. Really, like my mom's brothers during the Cold War era. They went in. They never saw action or none of that, but a lot of them were down, like during the Cuban Missile Crisis and stuff like that. So they were a little older than the Vietnam era. And then my mom's boyfriend, when she was, in high school or whatever, was actually killed in Vietnam. And, she talked about that a lot. And I think, me joining the military really upset her, for obvious reasons, you know, because she knew what it was like to lose somebody, and she thought, you know, don't want that to happen to my son too. So.
Right. Going back a little bit, sorry, I meant to ask this. Did you drink as a teenager? Did you do drugs or anything?
I smoked a joint here and there. Drinking wasn't my thing. You know, someone introduced me to marijuana when I was in high school. It wasn't an everyday thing, but, you know, I smoked here and there, you know, go to a party or something. But outside of that, I was never a drinker. I never started drinking until I joined the Marine Corps.
I heard. They're the how's the expression go? They're for alcoholics. They're in the greatest shape of the world, or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I mean, we certainly work hard, play hard was the term. Right? So,
right. Thank you for that. Sorry about going back on you. Tell me about Parris Island.
Parris Island is a legendary place, man. It's you know, as soon as you enter that place, you just feel the you know, sort of the aura to it. It's you know, they make Marines there, you know, so it's, you know, there's a lot of history there, a lot of history. I mean, they've been, you know, creating the people that are the best fighting force in the world, arguably. So it's definitely a special place, tough place. You know, it's not for everybody. Not everybody can be a Marine. That's why they say it's a few the proud. You know, you got to be a special person to go in the United States Marine Corps, and you know, they're going to test you down there.
What was it like showing up on your first day?
Oh man, it was nerve-wracking. It was a whirlwind of emotion. It was like, you know, what's going to happen to me next? You know, what's around this corner? You know, for everything from getting my hair chopped off to getting these uniforms to getting screamed at, and I mean, it was a lot to take in. But they keep you up for like almost 3 days, and you're just exhausted, and they completely break you down, and then they wake you up one morning after they give you about 8 hours of sleep after those 3 hours, and they're like, all right, let's start creating a Marine, and that's what they do.
Did you ever see anyone get singled out who wasn't making the cut?
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, we, yeah, they gave some special treatment out to some people, you know, so. And we would give out special treatment, too. If someone was falling behind, we'd take matters into our own hands. And
the other recruits would?
Yeah, sure.
Was it more to like build them up, or was it to make them quit?
It was more to build them up. You know, they like to say you're only strong as your weakest person. So we had to get them up to par. And, you know, it was crazy because usually the guy that everyone thought, like, they're not going to make it, they wind up doing something magnificent. You're like, okay, now he's one of us. You know, it's like, so everybody makes it, though. They're not going to let you fail. There's some people that get injured and hurt and stuff like that, but for the most part, they make Marines. That's what they do.
What was the toughest week for you?
Oh man, probably the first week. You know, it's you know, because everything's new. Your body's not in the shape that it needs to be. You know, I could barely do, I think, 5 pull-ups when I went to Parris Island, but you know, I left there being able to do 20. So, you know, it's the first week, definitely the adjustment to it and everything. You know, just being around other people constantly, it's tough. So,
how did the Marine Corps? I mean, you've mentioned that they built you up, but how did they celebrate you becoming a Marine?
Well, you go through something called the Crucible, which is sort of your final test, where you know you're up for a couple days, you march 25 plus miles, you go through all these obstacles, different training, you got to depend on each other. And then you march back to the parade deck in Parris Island, and that's when you become a Marine. They actually give you an eagle, globe, and anchor, which is the Marine Corps symbol, and they put it in your hand, and when they put that in your hand, you're now considered a Marine. So, you know, anyone who doesn't shed a tear when that happens, they're not human. You know what I mean? It's completely emotional, and it's a moment that every Marine goes through and will always remember. So,
remind me again, what year did you graduate from boot camp?
Boot camp, I graduated in 1999.
So this is pre 9/11. So
it is.
Whenever you joined the Marine Corps, did you imagine yourself going to fight in a war, though?
I knew that was a possibility. I think, and I was young and dumb too. I didn't, you know what I mean? I thought, well, you know, it probably won't happen because we hadn't been in war, really. Serious war since Vietnam. I mean, there was Desert Storm, not to downplay Desert Storm, but, you know, it was a very quick, like, you know, a lot of people forget about. So I think a part of me was like, that ain't ever going to happen, you know, but I knew there was a possibility that could happen. I mean, I'm joining the Marine Corps, so.
Sure. Combat infantry.
Yeah.
You were in the Corps on 9/11?
I was.
Do you remember that day?
Yeah, everybody remembers that day and where they were. I was, you know, I was actually home on recruiter's assistance. I was in Philadelphia. I was an active duty Marine at the time, and I'd come home. I was on a 30-day assignment to the recruiter's office. Try to help them recruit in the neighborhood. You know, friends, family, stuff like that. Young kids that were running wild in the streets. I go out there and, hey, man, there's a better way. Maybe you can join the Marine Corps. So I was actually, I was at my aunt and uncle's house, and I was sleeping in the basement. And my girlfriend at the time called the house. And my aunt and uncle didn't have the TV on or nothing like that. And she said, you know, is Timmy there? You know, I need to talk to him immediately. And my aunt had sensed the urgency in her voice and screamed down the basement, get up, get the phone. So I pick it up, and she said, you know, turn on the TV. And I turned it on, and that's right when the second plane hit the towers. And I dropped the phone. I remember thinking, oh my God, this is it, I'm going to war. And I got a phone call like an hour later, like, you need to get back to Camp Lejeune. So I had to jump in my car and drive back. And, you know, I knew my life was about to change then. I didn't go right to Afghanistan. Eventually I went to Iraq, but I knew at some point I was going to end up somewhere.
Right. So did you go back and do further advanced training at that point?
Yeah, I went back to, you know, Camp Lejeune, and I, you know, continued my duties as a Marine until, you know, Uncle Sam decided, hey, we're going to go into Iraq. And, you know, I'd seen a lot of people leave and go to Afghanistan. It's just one of them things, you're just waiting for your number to be called. And, you know, like I said, eventually we went into Iraq, and I actually was sent over to Kuwait prior to, I was transferred from my unit to 2nd Military Police Battalion, because they needed Marines to do convoy security, and they anticipated a lot of like POWs and stuff like that. So they were like, you're going to go with this unit. And I became a 50 cal machine gunner, and I, you know, trained for several weeks before going over, and then I deployed with them. We went to Kuwait before the war even started in Iraq. And I sat on the border of Iraq and Kuwait during something called the Shock and Awe campaign. Many people watched on TV. And I was on top of a Humvee on a 50 cal, and I watched them, you know, bomb the shit out of that country. And, you know, it was something to see. And then they blew the whistle and said, all right, Marines, go in and do what you do.
Describe the feeling of that day.
Oh, man. They kept telling us that there was, like, chemical weapons. So we were in MOP gear, which is, you know, if you come in contact with any kind of chemical weapons, any kind of gas or anything like that, it'll protect you. So we were in full gear, and, you know, they told us, like, there's a possibility we're going to get hit with these chemical agents, yada, yada, yada. And, you know, I was scared to death, to be honest with you. I was like, shit, man, like, you know, I don't want to die from choking on a gas or something like that. But, you know, you look to your left, you look to your right, and you see all these other Marines right there with you, and you're like, you know, we're going to do this together, no matter what happens. And
you're 23, 24 at this time?
Yeah, about that, 23, I think.
So a little bit older than maybe some of the other recruits?
Yeah.
'Cause you'd been in
Yeah, I mean, I was a sergeant at this time, so I had, you know, I had privates in private first class that were, you know, 18, 19 years old underneath me, and they're looking at me like, you know, what the hell, what do we do next, Sergeant? So it was, yeah, it was feeling I'll never forget, man.
So can you talk about the invasion?
Yeah, so we started, we were on the Iraq-Kuwait border. They did the Shock and Awe campaign, and they kept telling us in this little town in southern Iraq called Safwan that they had a big tank battalion. And we actually entered Iraq. We were kind of attached to the rear of 1st Marine Division. They led the way, and, you know, we were behind them, feeding them supplies, stuff like that. Long story short, there wasn't any huge tank battalion on the other end. They pretty much just, gave up. They laid their weapons down. They went into hiding. But we didn't stop. We went up to Basra Airfield. The battle on Nazaré at that time happened, pretty much right after the initial invasion. So Nazaré went down, which was a pretty big battle if you look back on that. And then went up to Baghdad. We were in the general area when they pulled the Saddam Hussein statue down. And they were all chanting, USA, USA. And, shortly after they were throwing rocks at us and shit, so.
What were your impressions of that?
I hated them people, man. I honestly did. At first I was like, I don't know, just the way they live and the way they treat each other. And, if I'm really being honest, I hated them at first. I thought, like, these people are awful people. And
Has that changed?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, once I was there for a little while longer. I realized that not all of them are bad. They've just been lied to their whole lives and taught that, this is the way that this should work, and, you're going to, more so than men. The men they're not good people, man. But the women and children, you can look at them and tell that they're abused. They're treated terribly, and they do what the men say. And I don't like that shit, So
how long? So the invasion part of the war, I've talked to a lot more veterans who were involved in the occupation, obviously, because it was longer. But
yeah.
How long did that phase last?
I'd say it was about, well, the way the TV portrayed it, it was, you had George Bush on the aircraft carrier saying, mission accomplished and all that, and really it was what, like 72 hours when he did that. But I would say, in my opinion, the initial like a 3-month thing, a 3-month ordeal that where we really got up and started seeing where we needed to go, what towns we needed to occupy, where the big population of people were. I mean, I'm sure they had a general idea from intel and stuff like that, but for the most part, until you actually get somewhere and start investigating stuff, you don't know what's going on. So it was like a 3-month thing, in my opinion.
How well did your training prepare you for the realities of combat?
Pretty spot on, man. I mean, in the Marine Corps, they push you. They let you know that these are the things that you're going to face. But I don't think anything can ever prepare you to see people mangled and children hurt, and nothing in the world can ever prepare you for that. You know what I mean? It's just seeing people's lives just completely upended, like mothers crying because their kids are dead. It's you can never prepare yourself for that.
For myself, never have gone to war, and for most of the people in the United States who have never gone to war, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as completely chaotic. Dirty comes to mind. If I had to give a one-word answer, it's a dirty thing. It's violent. It's it's somewhere that I hope people never have to go if they can help it.
Can you take me through a mission?
Mm-hmm.
Any particular one that comes to mind?
Sure. So I went to Basra Airfield. I got a call in the middle of the night. And I tell this story often. I do a lot of training with police and first responders and different organizations who come in contact with vets in public. And I tell this story, and I don't tell this story to glorify it, or I tell this story to give people a glimpse of some things that our service members faced in combat. So I get a call in the middle of the night, and they say, Sergeant Wynn, you need to put your convoy together, and you need to go up to a place called Basra Airfield. We wanted Basra Airfield because we wanted to land our planes there. We wanted to be able to supply the front lines. And so I'm on a gun turret, and we're approaching the airfield, and there's things that are on fire. There's You know, sand blowing around. It's, you know, as you can imagine, it's a combat zone. It's, you know, probably something that people see on TV. And I see a little silhouette of a body. I can tell it's a body. It's off in the distance. I got night vision goggles on. So I kick my driver, who's driving the Humvee, and I say, let's go investigate that. As we got closer, I realized that it's a very small girl. It's a little girl. She's badly burnt. Her hair's sort of matted into her skin. You know, she's been through it. Her family's obviously gone. So I get out of the gun. I pick her up. I put a field dressing on her head. And my mother had sent me a care package. And inside that care package was Slim Jims. So I was ripping them open. I was feeding this girl. She was very content in my arms. And, you know, I got 3 daughters of my own now. And I think about that girl sometimes. My gunnery sergeant was like, hey, Sergeant, you got to give that little girl up. You know, we got to push on and you can't bring her with us. So I had to give her to people that were there from the local town. They didn't know her. She didn't know them. But I had to give her up. And when I went to pass her off, she screamed and tried to hold on to my flak jacket. She knew she was safe in my arms. So to this day, like I said, I got 3 little girls. I think about that little girl. I don't know if she is alive. I don't know if she's dead. I don't know if she's a college student, a mother. Is she a terrorist? I don't know. I'll never know. But I know what condition she was in when I met her and when I had to leave her, and that's something that'll always stick with me. And again, that's why I tell that story, because we ran the 2 longest wars in U.S. history. We ran them side by side. Less than 1% of the population today actually volunteers to go in the military. So you can imagine the things that our service members have been through. And that is just a very, very, very small glimpse of what we endured. You know, and there's something called survivor's guilt that affects a lot of us when we come back. And it doesn't have to be your best friend that you served with who got killed or lost his legs, or, you know, it can be the civilians over there that got injured. It's that type of shit you can't shut off. You can't turn that off when you come back. It's something that you always think about.
Have you ever witnessed or experienced an event that crossed your moral understanding of the world? Moral injury, for example, you're probably familiar.
Yeah, I think in general, overall,
Just in general,
war.
participation.
Yeah, war is you know, we're taught. Especially, I went to Catholic school when I was younger. You know what I mean? Harming people, or killing people, or maiming people, whatever, is against everything I was taught when I was a kid. You know, so crossing a moral boundary, absolutely. I think, regardless of your religion, you know what I mean. I think, you know, just as in society, you know, in many countries, we're taught that, you know, harming other people is wrong, and so yeah, I mean, but you know that when you sign up for the military, you may have to do harm to somebody else. So
I'm sure those are things you thought about afterwards, not necessarily during.
Yeah.
Right?
it's fair to say.
I usually ask this question at the end of an interview, but it seems like a good time to do it now. Has your experiences in the military or afterwards impacted your understanding of the United States' role in the world and your participation in it?
Yeah, I think that I believe that Iraq was better off under Saddam Hussein. I believe that he had those people under control. There was rules that they lived by. I believe that when we got there, we disrupted their whole entire world. And we created chaos for them, who, and otherwise, they lived a pretty normal life, a normal life of their understanding under Saddam Hussein. So their life was what it was. And here we come, and we invade this country, and to this day, it's 5/29/19. Most of those places that we went, we took, and we bombed, and we fought, now belongs back to them. So, do I question? Yeah, why? Well, what the hell did we go for if we didn't make it a better place for them? I do think about that. And don't get me wrong, I love my country, and I'd do it all again tomorrow. But I think about the people whose lives were lost, not only United States service members, but the people over there too. And what, I think about it. Well, why? If they, now that you got all these terrorists over there who, they're running amok and killing the innocent people over there, more so than maybe we would have done. You know what I mean? And I just feel as though today, I'm about to be 40 years old. I look back on it now, and I'm like, they lived by a certain set of rules under Saddam Hussein, and they didn't cross the line. They didn't. There was more structure under him than there will ever be now. So
that's an interesting way to put it. I've heard similar answers.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, talking to any veteran who's actually experienced war is going to be a little different each time, but it's nothing compared to how it's portrayed in the media.
No.
You never get a real answer to that. So thank you for sharing that with me. It's very powerful. Do you think that your sense of, I'm skipping around, so you'll have to forgive me on that. Do you think that your sense of responsibility and advocacy of other veterans stems in part from that experience?
Absolutely. I think my, where I'm at now and the advocacy and how I every single day try to help another veteran who's struggling, whether they're a Vietnam vet or a, Iraq or Afghanistan veteran. I think it all stems from what's inside of me. I think, sort of the hurt, the confusion, the pain, everything, sitting in jail for a year, 7 arrests. Everything that I've done so far, whether it be in the military or in the civilian world with my arrest record and all that, has brought me to this very point. I'm sitting here talking to you right now. I told you earlier, sitting here and doing this interview and getting these stories out is something that's super important, man. And I am, I say this all the time, and I tell these vets when I work with them, lived experience is the most powerful thing that you can have. And, at the end of the day, that's what we're all made up of. We're made up of our lived experience. Even you, sitting here today, asking me questions and with the camera, it's your experience in life that has brought you to this point. So,
going back to that 22, 23-year-old Marine in 2003, 2004, how did you cope with what you were experiencing at the time?
Do you mean while in combat?
Or afterwards?
Afterwards?
Yeah,
so,
both.
So I probably should have mentioned this earlier. I was put on something called a stop loss, which means I was due to get out of the military, and Iraq broke out, and they said, Sergeant Wynn, you're not going anywhere, you're going to Iraq. So I was okay with that because the people that I served with, I wanted to go with, they weren't going without me as far as I was concerned. So I was okay with that.
Sure.
So when they lifted the stop loss and sent me home from Iraq, when I got back to Camp Lejeune, it was a ghost town because we were fighting Iraq and Afghanistan at this time. So there's really nobody there. And I got processed out of the Marine Corps. Like within 72 hours, I flew from Iraq to Camp Lejeune to being processed out of the military. And now I'm in my car driving down 95 North on my way back to Philadelphia. And I got back. I walked into my home, and I knew I was different, but I didn't know how different I was.
How long had you been gone?
I'd been gone for over 4 years.
4 years in a row.
Well, I'd come home on leave, stuff like that, but I didn't live at home for over 4 years.
So you're processed out of the Marine Corps at this time and you're back home.
Yeah. you know, and coming straight from Iraq, and now I'm back in Philadelphia. It's, you know, I didn't even really have time to decompress. It was different back then. You know, it was, you know, it's not like today where they had like, you know, you come home, you're in this, you know, environment where you're all together and you process what you're going through and all that. It wasn't like that back then. I was shipped out and sent home and signed my paperwork, and here I am in Philly.
How long was your tour in Iraq?
Almost 6 months. Yeah. So here I am. I'm back in Philadelphia. I got all these crazy emotions going on. I explain it as I tell people, like, if you go in the ocean up to your waist and the waves keep rolling in and hitting you, you know, you're struggling to get out there, but you keep getting hit with these waves. That's what it's like. Because people are coming up. You know, you always got the dummies that go, "Oh man, did you kill anybody over there?" Like, you know, you'd be surprised how many people ask that question.
Somebody actually asked.
Yeah, I've gotten that several times. A lot of times it's younger kids.
How do you respond to that?
If it's an adult, I just kind of look at them like, you know, get away from me. You know what I mean? I don't even entertain it. But a kid, you know, they're innocent. They, you know, that's a different story. But so here I am back in Philly. My cousin actually asked me to go out. He said, "You're back. Let me take you out for a couple drinks, you know, celebrate you coming home." So this was 4 days after I got back from Camp Lejeune, after, you know, being processed out. So you can say about 7 days after coming out of Iraq, give or take a little bit. I go out and I have these drinks with my cousin. I'm in a neighborhood bar, which is not my neighborhood, and I'm talking to these females at the end of the bar. This guy from the neighborhood didn't like that because I wasn't from his neighborhood. One thing led to another. There was a fist fight. I came out on top, but I also came out charged with aggravated assault.
Misdemeanor?
No, felony aggravated assault. And I was sitting in the 24th, 25th Police District here in Philadelphia, and sitting in this jail cell, and I was just over in Iraq. Sergeant in the Marine Corps, leading Marines, and now I'm sitting in a jail cell, and I'm like, how the hell did I get here? So, you know, I didn't stop there. I had 7 arrests total. I wound up beating that case because the guy couldn't pick me out of a lineup. I had a lawyer who did his job, and I beat that case, but, you know, several arrests after that.
But there were underlying problems.
Yeah, and I wasn't ready to face it yet. I still thought, nah, it was
Were
just...
you aware of them?
I knew emotionally inside of me, I had this feeling that I was like, you know, I was filled with anxiety. I was filled with anger. I was, you know what I mean? I didn't know what it was. Had no idea. You know, I didn't know. I just thought, like, you know, maybe I'm on edge. Maybe I need to take another drink. You know, so.
So was alcohol becoming a problem for you?
Yeah, it. You know, I woke up every day. I felt those emotions, and I said, well, let me just start drinking. I'll loosen up a little bit. I'll feel better. You know. And the problem is, like, when the alcohol wears off, then you're right back to square one.
Were you working at the time?
No, I didn't get work when I first came out. I had a couple of hours in the bank from my deployment, so I was kind of living off of that. Eventually that ran out, and then I started working odd jobs, you know, construction, stuff like that, but, you know, nothing serious. I didn't take life too serious after that. I was just kind of blown in the wind.
How did your family interact with you?
They would tell you probably it was like walking on eggshells around me. They, you know, my mom tried to talk to me several times, but, you know, she just couldn't. You know, she tried, but I would just, you know, I'm fine, get away from me. And it was like that for a lot of years, you know what I mean? It was, you know, but then they started to see multiple arrests, stuff like that. And, you know, they knew, like, something's up.
Were you encouraged during the Marine Corps or afterwards through the VA to report any problems?
No, not at all.
Did you have an opportunity to?
No.
So it wasn't like later on in the war where soldiers would come home and then they would be asked questions about their service, right? You didn't go through that process.
No, like I said, when I got back to Camp Lejeune, there was no time for that. There was no, you know, therapist, doctors, nothing like that. you know, that has since changed. I mean, I think not too long after I got out that it changed, but
I mean, still, a lot of men don't take advantage of those.
yeah, I think
There's a stigma attached.
sure. I like to call them male myths. You know what I mean? There's certain things like men don't cry, right? That's something we're taught when we're younger. Men don't cry. Men can drink and hold their liquor. Men are independent. You know, this is all bullshit that we're taught as men when we're younger. You know how many times when you're younger, you're a kid and your eyes fill up because your ball went down the sewer. You're like, your older cousin or your uncle or something, stop crying, stop being a sissy. You know what I mean? So these are all male myths that we live by, and it took me years to realize that, and years of talking to people that I think we're damaged when we're younger. So it's one of them things like, just men are, you're not supposed to do that.
I know that you counsel or mentor
Yeah.
a lot of other veterans. How do you approach that conversation with somebody who's not necessarily done it?
Well, I just tell them that, number one, I share my experience right off the bat. I tell them who I am. Tell them that, I've been broken, and I've been able to rebound. And it's okay to be broken. It's okay to be, it's okay to not be all those things that we're taught to be. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to ask for help. For the longest time, I thought, I'm this big bad Marine. I can walk through walls because that's what I was taught to do. But I tell them that it's okay to just let it all out, man. Let it out. What we talk about stays between us, and for the most part, they take my advice. Every once in a while, there's a younger version of me that comes through, and they're like hard-headed and stubborn, and I'm like, I know who you are, but eventually you'll come around.
So what was the point that you came
around? Well, prison will make you come around, I'll tell you that. That's, I remember this one judge sentenced me to go to Coatesville Veterans Hospital, which was an inpatient drug and alcohol program. And I went out there and, even before that, I think, I get asked this question a lot, and I like to call it a moment of clarity. So let me go back to being in Karen Frobhold Correctional Facility here in Philadelphia. And I went to the VA after like my first or second arrest. They gave me medication. They gave me Xanax, clonazepam, whatever I needed to sleep, whatever that they needed to give me to just mellow me out.
What year is this?
This was probably 2006. 2007 was when the first time I actually went to a VA. And they gave me a ton of medication. And so I'm in shackles. I'm in the bowels of the prison. And they're taking me to the mental health unit. I was known as the crazy vet on the cell block. Everyone's like, oh, that's the vet. You can hear the rumblings of the other inmates and shit like that. And everyone came up and asked questions like, "What you were in war?" Like, I got that constantly. And so here I am. They're taking me down to this doctor, and they send you if you're part of the mental health, if you're on any kind of medication. Every 2 weeks or whatever, they send you down to see the doctor for a checkup. So I'm arguing with this lady. I'm telling her, I don't want any more medication. I've had enough of this. That's what the VA's given me. At this point, I made it up in my mind that I'm going to stop using these drugs and these pills and all this stuff. And this lady's like, nah, I'm giving you more medication. I don't want to hear it, Mr. Wynn. You're going to have to take these. Yeah, because they make sure you take your medication in prison. It got to the point where I was cheeking it, is what they call it. I just put the pill up and then, and corrections officer would look, and I'd, go back to my cell block and spit it out. But she's like, I want to give you more medication. I'm like, no, lady, like, I don't want any more of this stuff. So the door slides open in her office, and it was already a little cracked, but it just kind of, and this man walks in. Had no idea who he was. He wasn't a clinician. He wasn't any kind of doctor who was able to treat PTSD. What he was a guy who was retired, got a second job working in the prison, He was a file clerk in a mental health unit. So this guy comes walking in, and he asks this lady, he says, "Can I just have a couple minutes with him?" And doctor kind of looks at him like, "Okay." So she gets up and walks out. And he says, "Sit down, Tim. I can call you Tim?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So, like I said, he wasn't a doctor, clinician, nothing like that. But what he was a Vietnam vet. And he spoke my language. Although our stories weren't exactly the same, we had been through some of the similar things. So he sat me down, and I'll never forget what he said to me that day. He said, "Tim, that person you were before you left is gone, and they're never coming back. You're forever a different person now. And these things that you're doing, they're not working for you. So let's start working on ways to combat this, different ways. Because all this anger and all that keeps getting you in prison." So that was my first interaction with peer-to-peer support. And it was a game changer. Like I said before, being one of the first to go and first to come back, not too many of my peers were out here. They were still over there. So finally I got to talk to somebody that understood it. Finally I had an outlet to where I talked to this man, and I knew he wasn't sitting here going, "Crazy vet again." He understood it, and I felt comfortable with him. So for almost a year, he would send a slip to my cell block to get me off of the unit, and I'd come down, I'd sit in that room with him. He'd sit in one end of the room, I'd sit in the other, and some days we wouldn't say shit to each other, but he knew that's exactly what I needed. And that was my moment of clarity.
Was this the first time that you had really talked openly about your experiences in Iraq?
Yes.
With anyone?
Yeah, absolutely. I got to, tell him certain things, tell him what I was feeling, and again, this guy wasn't a doctor. He was just a Vietnam vet, But that held so much weight with me, man. It was like, this guy actually, because he didn't have to walk in there that day. He didn't have to come in there and get involved and butt in. But I think, in a sense, he saw a younger version of him. I was like, here's my opportunity to, help this guy. So,
is it still difficult to talk about war with people who haven't gone through it?
Yeah, I think so. I think you kind of get that look from people where they're just like, like, wow. I don't think they fully understand what it is I'm saying. I think they're more so, most people I encounter are more so in it for their own satisfaction. Like, I've never been there. I want to know what it's like. You know what I'm saying? So you don't get that from a veteran. You don't get that from someone who's, been through it. They genuinely care and they get you.
So it seems to me that most of your problems in the criminal justice system are related to aggression or violence, maybe alcohol related. Is that true as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Were there other things? I mean, you mentioned some prescription pills and things like that.
Sure.
Were you abusing those?
Yeah, I mean, the VA gave me the medication, and I took more than what they were told me to take. I drank more than I normally ever would. And I know it was stupid. I mean, people always go, well, why'd you do that? Well, because it's 100% effective. It works every single time. It drowns out those emotions. It takes care of whatever you're feeling. The problem is it wears off, as we all know. And that's where the real problem comes in. So it's really just putting a Band-Aid on it. But it's 100% effective. It works every single time.
So after this moment of clarity, as you put it, when did the recovery process begin? Did it begin in that jail, or did it continue?
I would say that was the beginning of the process.
Okay.
And then shortly after that, a judge here in Philadelphia sentenced me to go to Coatesville VA Hospital, like I mentioned before, and I went through an alcohol and drug program. So January 4th this year, I had 10 years. So it's been some time. But, I put the drugs and the alcohol down. I went through that program. I made my mind up that, hey, I can't live like this anymore. But with 18 months clean and sober, I got another arrest. So You can put the drugs, you can put the alcohol down, but until you work on the mental health stuff, you're not going to be okay. You have to take a holistic approach to this. You can't do some and not the other. So here I am, clean and sober. We'll call it clean and crazy. And I hate using that word, but it is what it is. I thought I had it all figured out. Like, I'm not a drunk or a drug addict no more. My life's okay. I never, because that program I went to out there was for drugs and alcohol.
Sure.
But then I remember at that time, I tried to get into the PTSD program out there, and I got denied. There was such an influx. There was only like 12 beds at the place, and there was such an influx of veterans. This was close to 5 years after I came home. So I got denied, and I came back to Philly, and I was like, all right, well, I'm clean, I'm sober. I'll just keep going to meetings. Like, everything else will work itself out. But with 18 months clean and sober, I got in something called, we'll call it a road rage incident. And I ended up in handcuffs again. And that's how I got into Philadelphia Veterans Treatment Court.
Before we get into that, have you ever been homeless?
I wouldn't say completely homeless. My definition of homeless is sleeping on the street.
Sure.
But I have been sort of a couch surfer, for lack of a better term. It got so bad to where, like, my family was like, well, you can't stay here anymore because you're just destroying things, and not necessarily physically destroying or breaking things in the home, but just the mood in the home. Like, you're just you gotta go get help. So
I know this is a difficult question, but have you ever been suicidal?
yes, sure. I mean, I've contemplated it. When I was out there drinking, drugging, or even sitting in a jail cell. I was like, it's so much easier if I just did it. My life's in shambles. Like, can I ever come back from this? Like, I thought about it many a times. I've been there. I've been there, right on the edge.
Yeah, I know you know more than most people. Like the very alarming statistics, like 22 a day. Where do you think those problems come from?
Isolation. Isolation is I feel like the backbone of suicide and the suicide epidemic with veterans. Do I know the answer to it? I don't, but I feel like the isolation is the worst part. The worst thing that a veteran can do is isolate, not get out in the community, not talk to others. Find something, even if it's faith, whatever it is. You can have faith in anything. You can have faith in this microphone. If that gets you out of where you're at, so be it.
Slightly different question. How do you memorialize
The people that... So, I'm currently working on a project. When we started, it was 288 service members from the state of Pennsylvania who have died in either Iraq or Afghanistan. That was last year. As of 2 months ago, it's going up to 290, so we're still losing them.
because of the recent accident?
So, and you can research this. I'm part of something called PAGWOT Memorial. If you go to pagwotmemorial.org, we're trying to build a memorial in Philadelphia for the 290 service members from the state who have died. A lot more nationwide, but, I think when I look at a veteran that comes into our court, I know they could be next. So what better way to memorialize the ones that are not here than to help the ones that are? And part of this process too for me is trying, I've raised close to $185,000 so far just through grassroots efforts to build this memorial in Philadelphia for the service members from our state. Just met with an architect 2 weeks ago who've agreed to do the design for free. So I've been working on this for about 2 years. Like I said, man, I just try to stay engaged and that's how I memorialize the ones that aren't here anymore.
It's very meaningful. Yeah. Do you think that helps you as well? Like to throw yourself into the work that you do?
No doubt about it. My whole recovery revolves around what I do for others. And I was invited to the White House, first under President Obama, and then again under President Trump. And I was standing right in front of President Obama, as close as me and you are. And he quoted Gandhi by saying, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service to others." And I'll say that again. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service to others. And I heard him say it that day. We were standing on the White House lawn. Now here I am. I'm a drunk and a drug addict. I will be till the day I die, because recovery is a lifelong process. I'm a guy who has 7 arrests, spent a year of my life in prison. And now I'm standing on a White House lawn hearing the President of the United States talk. And when he quoted Gandhi and said that, it felt like everybody else went away. And it felt like he was talking to me. He described my life with that quote. And that's what it is. I mean, I found myself when I started helping others. So
it's really powerful. So let's talk about that then. How long were you involved in the Veteran Treatment Court as a participant?
So I was sentenced to 8 months, and I did great. And they let me off in 6 months. We have a graduation twice a year, May, and which tomorrow is our graduation, as you know. May and then November. So if you're doing everything you're supposed to do, your lawyer will petition to get you off early release, I guess you can say, for lack of a better term. And that's what happened. I did everything correct. They knew I had a substantial amount of clean time. And
because you had been sober before.
Yeah. And they knew that I was really thriving in these groups and helping my peers and stuff like that. And they let me go. They let me graduate, and like I said, I started instantly working with veterans.
Were there different stages? So in the first increment, you would have to meet like weekly, or
Sure.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So when you first come into veterans court, it's depending on your case, there's a lot of things to play into it. So depending on your case, depending on your history, depending on what your treatment plan is, we have veterans come in here who are, intervening as drug users who are shooting 2 bundles of heroin a day. I was not one of those people, but we do have those people that come in here, and they got to report on a weekly basis. For me, that was not the case. I was every 2 weeks when I first came in here, and then it became monthly until I graduated. But when you first come in here, it's a whirlwind, man. People think that veterans court is a break and veterans just get a slap on the wrist. That's bullshit. This court is harder than any other court in here. If you're put on probation down the hallway, you go out in the community, you have a probation officer, you might see them, once every 2 months. In the veterans court and the treatment courts in general, not just veterans treatment courts, drug courts, you're held to a higher standard, especially in veterans court. Like Judge Dugan always says, I need that person that raised their right hand and swore to defend the Constitution. I need that person back here in this courtroom. I know you have it in you, and we need that person to come back. You need to start working on a new mission in life. And it brings you right back to being in the military. It brings you back to having a mission again. Military revolves around mission. It's all about the purpose, about the cause, about execution. And when you get out of the military, that's ripped away from you. All of a sudden, here you are in the community. You're like, well, what do I do now? And then when I found myself in veterans court, I came in, I walked in, I looked to my left and my right, and here's veterans that look just like me, and they're working on a mission, but this mission is recovery now. So instantly, my first observation when I came into this court was sort of like the military. I'm getting instructions from an officer, you know, or higher up that's sitting up there. You know, they have their sergeants and their corporals and all that work, probation officer, Department of Behavioral Health, the VA. You know, and I'm part of a chain of command again. And just brought me back to a better place.
Interesting. You've kind of talked about this, basically, this idea that although you were sober, you had treated the alcoholism, the drug addiction, but there were still underlying problems that hadn't been treated.
Mm-hmm.
How do you treat someone who has problems with violence or experienced violence?
Mm-hmm.
How do you treat that?
I feel that someone who has experienced violence or currently is still violent, maybe living with anger, I think you need to find out, and I'm not a doctor, you know what I mean? I just know from my own experience. I know from working with these veterans. You need to find out what's driving that violent behavior. For instance, I put the drugs and the alcohol down. But the drugs and the alcohol weren't what were making me a violent person. It was the mental health issues. When I talked about earlier about standing in the ocean waist deep and those waves keep rolling in. For anyone that's been in the ocean and done that, it's aggravating. You're like, I'm just trying to get out there, or I'm trying to keep my balance. And living with a mental health issue can bring on anger, can bring on rage. Imagine waking up every morning depressed, waking up full of anxiety. Your body wants to go out in society. Your body and your mind, they want to go out there. They want to be normal. They want to participate in things. They want to be a loving father. They want to be a good employee. But this mental health issue is affecting everything that they do. So anger turns into a go-to emotion for a lot of us. So you need to take a holistic approach to this. You need to fix little things at a time. You know, failed relationships with your family can cause anger. Alcohol and drugs can cause anger. You need to address the mental health issues. You need to take the holistic approach, work on everything, get everything up on an even playing field before you can address the anger. I think the anger goes away when that person gets better in life, when everything gets better. A lot of these veterans, they don't have housing. They don't have income. You know, they don't have employment. Their families are a mess from their drug abuse. Their relationships are failed with their families. And that's what they get in the Veterans Court. They begin to work on every little aspect. And eventually they're not violent anymore. They're not miserable. They can wake up and enjoy life. And all that anger and all that goes away.
That's a great answer. Do you think that prison rehabilitates people in general?
I think that prison is a good starting point for someone who is completely off the rails, for lack of a better term. I think just as I did, they can get their moment of clarity in prison. They can get a little bit of time to dry out or withdraw from the drugs and, you know, have some time to sit and really think about what's going on in their life. Do I think long-term prison sentences and all this that goes on in society, what we have traditionally done, I don't think that works, no. You know, I know it doesn't work. But I think in some cases, not all cases, I think jail is needed. You know, for someone who's running the streets on a daily basis and getting in all types of stuff, sometimes they need to go sit for a little while. But for the most part, there's no real rehabilitation in prison. You know, it's a timeout, for lack of a better term. But there's no real programs, at least not in Philadelphia, where, you know, we don't have a veterans wing in the Philadelphia prison system. I've been saying this for years. You know, we need to have a veterans wing in there. Buffalo has one. There's towns all across the country that have a veterans wing inter-county jail where they can get some sort of treatment while they're in there. But if you're just putting people in a jail cell and expecting them to change their thought process or their purpose in life, it's not going to happen. So,
this might seem like a simple question given your experiences and who you are and what you've done, but do you think that there's a relationship between trauma and incarceration?
Absolutely, 100%. You're not going to find somebody in prison that hasn't experienced trauma. I've done work in the prisons after being an inmate. I've gone back and held trauma groups inside the same prison I was once housed. And every veteran that steps in that room has some sort of trauma. Most of them are, Philadelphia's a rough town. You know, your trauma doesn't have to come from the military. If you grew up in North Philadelphia, you've been through some trauma. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Just living on the street, you know what I mean? And you can live in a happy, healthy home, but right outside your door is complete madness, you know? We all got some sort of trauma, man. We all do. But I think the people that are in prison have experienced more trauma than the average person.
And then the trauma in the environment.
Sure. I mean, that's a traumatic experience itself.
Yeah.
I mean, that can cause, I've seen people who, you know, they're frequent flyers in the prison, you know what I mean? And, you know, even though it's so traumatic when they go there, they somehow find a way to come back to it. It's almost like a sickness, you know what I mean? So,
if there were a lesson that the public could draw from veteran treatment court and apply it to the criminal justice system at large, what do you think it would be, if anything?
I think having all the resources in one place. You see people get out of prison constantly where they get back in the community and, you know, they're practically beating on doors to get what they need to survive. And these are locked doors. They don't make it easy for people from prison to get the services that they need for survival.
It's hard to get a job.
It's hard to get a job. I mean, with a felony. And
can you vote?
I can vote, yeah. I have not been convicted of a felony, so I can still vote.
A lot of people can't even vote.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, and let's face it, I mean, the majority of people that are in prison are African American. You know, and I'd like to think it's changing, but it's not. Let's be honest. I mean, if a black man and a white man go for a job in this country, the white man's probably going to get it, if we're being honest. So you have a ton of minority people who are getting out of prison. They go for a job. They can't get hired. Number one, they're a felon. Number two, because of the color of their skin. How are those people supposed to survive? How are they supposed to not go back to selling drugs? You know what I mean? So it's a disgrace. It really is. It's, you know, and it can happen to anybody, but more so to minority people, I feel.
Yeah, I just have all kinds of questions. You'll have to forgive me if I'm jumping around at all, but can you talk about the mentor program?
Yeah, so the mentor program. People always go, well, what do you guys do? So the mentor program you can think of as a battle buddy. So, you know, when you go to your basic training, your boot camp, whatever branch of service you're in, typically whoever your bunkmate is considered your battle buddy, and you watch each other's back. And we try to implement that in our court as well. All the mentors are veterans. They all have some sort of lived experience. Although no two people's stories are exactly the same, they're very similar. So when a veteran walks in here for the first time and they're like, you know, what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? This is confusing. All these people are chanting or barking out orders, and you know, I don't know what a probation officer does. They don't know this stuff. So in walks the mentor, and the mentor says, "Let's sit down and talk. Let me tell you a couple things about this court and what you can expect." The veteran is more likely to listen to the guy with one of these shirts on and the tattoos on his arm than he's going to somebody on the other side of the bar of the court with a suit and tie on who looks like they're looking to put them in jail.
Sure.
So the mentor program is here to ease that. It's all about transition. Transition out of the military, transition into court. It's it's all change and transition, and we're here to alleviate that and answer any kind of questions. We don't report to the other side of the bar to court. Whatever the veteran tells us sticks with us, unless, of course, the golden rule, they're going to hurt themselves or somebody else. So we're a battle buddy for them coming through the criminal justice system.
Are most of the mentors volunteers?
Yes, they're all volunteers.
So a lot of them are usually retired, either disability or just retired?
Yeah, we have, Vietnam vets. We actually have two, myself and another Iraq War vet, who happens to be a female, which we're pretty lucky to have a female veteran as a mentor. We actually have two female veteran mentors in our court, and we're, from what I know, just from traveling around the country, we're pretty lucky to have that.
Do you have a lot of women veterans in the program?
We have more right now than we ever have. We have currently have 6 females in our program at once, which is it's more than we've ever had. So
how would you describe the demographic of the veterans who come in here as far as like race or ethnicity?
I would say more so African American. As far as era, I would say it's a split house between Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. We've had a World War II vet come in here before, so that was that was a special thing, but.
That is special because they're in the 90s now.
Yeah, he had dementia, and he wound up getting off his medication, and he pulled a weapon on a neighbor. And I'll never forget, he came out of the sheriff's door right over my shoulder, and he was on a cane, and I thought Judge Dugan was going to jump off the bench. Like, why is this man in custody? Being a World War II vet, like, they handled that instantly.
In my research, I've come across a lot of veterans who end up in prisons and in jails. They have other than honorable discharges.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that?
Sure. So in the Philadelphia Veterans Treatment Court, we take everybody, regardless of your discharge. We take a look at their military service. We've had a veteran come in here who did 3 tours in Afghanistan, came home on leave after his last tour, had a weapon on him, discharged that weapon, came home and his best friend had overdosed on heroin. So he got a bunch of booze in him and thought, I'm going to go after the drug dealer. He knew who the dealer was, and he went to the house and banged on the door, told him to come out. He wanted to, have a couple words with him. The guy wouldn't come out. He stepped back and he put several rounds in the house. Is that a guy who we're going to throw to the curb? Absolutely not. The guy got a dishonorable discharge from the Marine Corps. Spent some time in a brig. Still had this open case here in Philadelphia. They took a very, very hard look at his case, the DA's office, the judge, everybody, and they decided because of his military service, we're going to bring him into this court and do all we can for him. That individual now had a discharge upgrade. We were able to get that done here in the court. So he now has a full benefit package, GI Bill, everything. He's got everything back, health care, whole 9 yards. He's got it all back in his life. He's the vice president of a veterans nonprofit organization. And we live by the motto here in Philadelphia, leave no veteran behind. And, we stand by that.
A lot of the cases I've read about or researched or interviewed veterans involved in these problems is that a service member will have some incident related to PTSD in the military. Oftentimes they get kicked out from the military because of that incident.
Sure.
They're denied services, counseling services, because of the discharge status. So it's like this cycle where someone has trauma and they get kicked out and then they can't get access to counseling services because of the trauma. This is especially true with women and military sexual trauma. Sure. Which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah. We actually had a veteran his time ended. He was with us for like almost 5 years. He walked in here. He was a heroin addict. He walked in here beat down. And he got up in front of the judge, and the judge was asking him where he served and this and that. And the guy was very sluggish and not very coherent. And the judge said, well, you know, do you have a DD-214? Can you prove any of this? And, you know, he's, no, I don't have any of that. He was, you know, he's pretty hammered up. And the judge said, okay, well, I'm going to send you down. You can't prove any of this. I'm going to send you down to a trial room for a regular court hearing. Well, he started walking towards the exit, and I heard him mumbling, and he goes in his back pocket, and he pulls this piece of paper out. Here, it's his DD-214. He goes, oh, I do have it. So I open it up, and I instantly see Purple Heart on there. So I said, you know, I'm off to the side. I say, hey, Judge, like I waved the paper at him, and he says, give it to me. Long story short, this guy, Army veteran, was hit with an IED. I've watched the video. He was in a vehicle, hit with the IED. Spent 2 years in Walter Reed, rehabilitating. They gave him pain pills. He got hooked on the pain pills. They took him off of the pain pills. So what he started to do was he would go to the PX down at Walter Reed, and he would steal expensive bottles of liquor. And he'd take them out into the community and trade the liquor for heroin. Got caught. They kick him out of the Army. He was about to get full retirement in a week's time. They kick him out. He's got no benefits, nothing. He's living in a crack house in North Philly. I went back that day after court, tracked him down in North Philly, pulled him out of the crack house, got him into a crisis response center. Another veteran who got a discharge upgrade and all that stuff. So,
Do you want to pause for a minute?
sure. Yeah, it's all good. Oh, a couple more minutes, Rich.
You're fine. I just don't know if we're
All right, yeah, we'll be done soon.
Do we need to wrap up?
You can stay here at 5 o'clock, man.
Nah, I'm out of here probably in about 40 minutes, so.
No, it's fine.
All right.
No worries. I can always edit it out later.
It's all good.
Sorry. You.
Yeah, so he got a, back to the veteran, he got discharge upgrade and all that. He was with us for almost 5 years. He got, you know, full 100% VA disability, all that, but we were able to, you know, work with him and build him back up to the best possible person he could be, so.
It's damn near impossible to get them upgraded too.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Less than 10%.
Yeah. We have an organization here in Philadelphia called the Military Assistance Program, and they've kind of made it their mission to get these discharges upgraded, and they're pretty good at it. So.
At some point, I'll give you the contact information from the coordinator of the Veteran Treatment Court in Holyoke. He asked me to give it to you, actually.
Okay, cool.
They've done that a couple of times, and they're trying to just reach out and coordinate and see what other people are doing. But thank you for that.
Yeah.
You know, you've mentioned heroin a few times, and as I continue to research this topic, it keeps coming up. I mean, we're in the middle of an opiate epidemic. Can you talk about the relationship between opiates, veterans, and heroin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see a large number of opiate addicts come into our court system. Unfortunately, for a long period of time, that was the VA's answer to chronic pain, was give them painkillers. I'm happy to report that they've changed that, you know, in a positive manner, big time. But, you know, heroin's easy to get. You know what I mean? It's cheaper. It's easy to get. It's not only for pain. It's, you know, it numbs your emotions as well. You know, you do a bag of heroin, and you know, if you're living with a mental illness, it's a good way to fade away for a little while and not have to deal with it. You know, it's easier. You know, some would say it's easier to get a bag of heroin than it is to go get a quart of beer. So, at least in Philadelphia, it is. So.
Has it always been like that? Have you been able to notice a trend?
I mean, as long as I've been here, we've had. When I first came in here, it was really bad. It was really bad. I mean, we had veterans sleeping under the benches who were just in terrible, terrible shape. And I think that in part was because of the VA was, you know, got them going on these prescription medications. We still have them, but I don't think it's as bad as it was 5 years ago, if I'm being honest. But we still do have opiate addicts that come in here. You know, now they can give you a shot now that's an opioid blocker, which is huge, huge. And, you know, the judge will sentence them to get this shot, you know, on a monthly basis that'll block the opiates. And in a lot of ways, that's saving their lives. So it's, but, yeah, we're in the middle of a war on our own, you know, on our own streets. It's insane. I mean, you know, I'm almost 40 years old, man. I've been around a while. I've lived in the city. I've seen a lot of crazy things happen, but this is on a whole nother level. This is unbelievable.
I've never seen it as bad as I did whenever I visited here last month.
Mm-hmm.
Just downtown. Just,
I mean,
the homelessness and the addiction. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the reasoning behind it, but, you know, from what I'm told, Philadelphia has the good heroin, and people travel from far and wide to come here for heroin. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's why it gets, you know, Baltimore and heroin are the two, or Baltimore and Philly are the two spots where it's like, you know, if you're a heroin addict, like, you know, let's go get some of that.
I'll tell you, it's in rural America too.
Yeah, it's everywhere. But
cities, so, well, thank you for the insights,
mm-hmm.
because the more I research this topic, I think what I'm writing about is the heroin epidemic, the opiate epidemic, you know,
mm-hmm.
and the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the relationship between them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's a problem.
Yeah.
I keep noticing. So, how long have you been a mentor?
It's about 5 years. Close to 5.
And you're also involved. Just tell me about your roles in your community.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I'm a father of 3 daughters.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you're telling me. God has a sense of humor sometimes, I can tell you. They certainly keep me on my toes. So I'm married. I have 3 daughters. They're my number 1 priority. But I'm involved in so much, man. I'm, you know, just being a volunteer and a chaperone on something called Honor Flight. Actually, this Sunday we'll be going. We take Vietnam vets down to Washington, D.C. to visit the monuments and bring them back and give them the party that they never got. So I'm involved in that. I'm involved in building this memorial. I do equine therapy with horses every Tuesday with a lot of our veterans. There's a ton, man. I could go on forever that I'm involved in. I constantly keep moving, man. It's just part of my recovery. You know, 12-step programs I go to still. So I ride motorcycles. I ride a Harley Davidson. So I ride with a all Marine Corps motorcycle club, and we do a lot of charity work in the community. You know, always raising money for something, for some sort of wounded vet or something like that. So I do crisis intervention training with the Philadelphia Police Department, so I teach them about veterans issues, about veterans courts, how to interact with veterans when they come in contact with them on the streets.
What do you teach them?
So I teach them about military culture first and foremost, because they need to know that to understand a veteran. You know, a lot of us, most of us, I should say, know somebody who was in the military, whether it's an aunt, uncle, cousin, you know, Bob next door, whoever it may be. But they still have a lot of questions. They really don't understand. So I kind of get in depth of what military culture is about. I try to relate it to the police department culture. It's very similar. Then I share my own personal story. I have about 2 hours with them. I share my story. I give them some stats about what had happened in the war, as far as what people have come in contact with, how long the wars were. Because you'd be surprised. You know, I walk into a room with police officers, and the first thing I ask is, who looks young in here? And I usually have this, you know, little petite female officer in the back. She'll raise her hand and she'll go, I'm young. And I'll say, well, how old were you when 9/11 happened? And she'll say, I was 3. And I said, well, I was an active duty Marine when 9/11 happened. So, you know, they were just babies when these wars were going on. So they really don't, you know, they don't know the half of it. So it's important to educate them, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are coming in contact with veterans first on the streets. So
I know that Justice for Veterans and other advocates are creating intervention or even just trying to come up with a way for police to de-escalate situations with veterans. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's they need to know what mental health is. They need to know what drug addiction is. They need to know what military culture is. This is all stuff that will only make our first responders stronger. And if they want to, and to be honest with you, it comes down to even body language. I think a lot of officers, and I don't think this is just with veterans. I think this is in general. Body language is huge when you're talking to an individual, and they need to realize that. They need to realize that when they're communicating with somebody, not just verbally, but physically, they need to know how to do that. Not to spook a person or we just had an instance here in Philadelphia where a guy with autism was he was begging for change. I shouldn't say begging. He has a thing with quarters. He likes to collect quarters. So he was walking in between the cop cars, or in between the parked cars in North Philly, and a detective was going from point A to point B, allegedly, because it just happened, right? So, long story short, this individual was shot by the cop because the cop thought he had a weapon. Now, where's the training for that? How come that police officer got to that point? So yeah, I think not just with the veteran community, this needs to happen as a whole in society. There needs to be more training. There needs to be, some things you need to look for. Not just police officers, people in general. Just need to be educated.
If you had advice to give to a veteran who's coming back from Afghanistan, for example, what advice would you tell them?
I would tell them that isolation will be the death of you. Get involved. Get out in your community. Find purpose in helping others. You need to get involved with other people. You need to share your lived experience, whether it be with, other veterans, with children, whoever it may be. You absolutely need to get involved. Don't just isolate, because nothing good is going to come out of isolation, ever.
On the other hand, what do you think that the public needs to understand about the problems that veterans face after coming home from the war?
I think they need to realize that we are not any different than what they are. We've just experienced a little bit more trauma than they have. I think they need to educate themselves as well. They need to know that veterans are the best that society has to offer. We're selfless. We do, we sign up because we want to help other people. And society needs to build on that. They need to look at our population and say, these men and women are the greatest we have. And they can make our community stronger. And, I'm not sure if it happens, but, there is stigma around veterans, You hear this 22 veterans a day commit suicide. I hate that. I hate it because guess what? If you really get into it and look at it, it's not our generation that's killing themselves. It's more so Vietnam and the older generation. So this whole 22 a day campaign that's going around and they're raising money and all that, it builds a negative stigma around our generation. And a lot of people think, wow, our Iraq and Afghanistan vets are really they're off, That's not the case, We have some things going on, but we're not, I just hate that whole 22 a day thing. Like, it portrays us in a negative light.
It's become like a cliche, right?
Yeah, I hate it.
How do you feel whenever people thank you for your service, just out of curiosity?
I don't take offense to it. I think people just want to be kind. You know what I mean? And I think when they say that, I know veterans that are like, don't thank me,
Yeah, some people don't feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, I don't, because I know that their intentions are, they just want to be nice. and somewhere inside their body, they're like, man, I got a lot of respect for this person. Like, I just want to thank them. Like, you know, and these are patriots, man. These are people that, you know, they just love the country. They love. I just want to say it. I mean, they're not saying it just because, you know, they want to thank you. They genuinely want to thank you, and I'm okay with that.
Since you brought it up, how do you define patriotism?
Patriotism to me is, even if you don't agree with what your country is doing, by all means voice it, you know, but don't try to destroy this country. You know what I mean? Don't try to rip it down. There's a lot of things that go on today in politics, and I won't go down that rabbit hole, but, you know, there's people just need to realize that other people have different opinions on things. You know what I mean? And it's okay to have your opinion, whether, you know, I agree with it, you agree with it, whoever agrees with it, but don't try to destroy other people's opinions on things. That's the beauty of this country. You know what I mean? The beauty of this country is, if you're a patriot, regardless of whoever someone supports or someone likes or whatever, just love that person anyway, man. You know what I mean? Just be fair to everybody. That's being a patriot. You know, and being a patriot is, you know, I don't expect you to put on a American flag jumpsuit and run the streets, you know what I mean? Because that's not what it's about. It really ain't. It's just being fair to one another and supporting everybody, man. That's a patriot.
I like that answer. What do you think society can do to ensure that people don't go to prison? Whether it be veterans or just any American.
I think that that's a big question, man. That's a big question. What can society do to ensure that people don't go to prison? They need to give them the tools they need to survive. You know, they need to make sure that people have food, income, housing, and support. If you have all those things, you're likely not to go to prison. You know what I mean? If you have those things, if you can show people, you know, if you're from a lower class and you know, you don't have this, like, we as a society, we do a terrible job of preparing people for life. You know what I mean? If you're from like a low class neighborhood, you get shit on. You really do. You don't get, you know, you don't get the education. Our school systems are shattered all across this country. You know, the public school system, these people aren't getting educations. I believe that, you know, in the 80s you had the crack epidemic, right? So you had a bunch of parents that weren't around, which created a bunch of children without guidance. Now we're in the middle of an opioid epidemic. So what kind of children are we creating today with this? Because there's so many parents that are involved in the criminal justice system, using drugs. You know, in 20 years from now, what kind of children are these, you know, what kind of adults are these children going to be? We just need to be able to support younger people better and give them the opportunity to survive.
You have all the great answers for my big questions. I just have a few left if you have a little more time.
Yeah, man.
I hear the term trauma-informed care a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like to you?
Trauma-informed care. That means trauma-informed care to me means that the individual who is getting that care needs to be informed of what they are living with. So many times people go in front of a doctor, a therapist, or a counselor, and they're being told certain things, right? But are they really being educated on what their mental illness is? Because for the longest time I wasn't. I didn't know what PTSD is. I didn't know what trauma was, you know, but I was able to educate myself. You know, I've had some good therapists and counselors that were like, I'm not going to sit here and just tell you everything and what you should be doing and all this. I want you to educate yourself. So I think people with mental illness need to learn about what it is they're living with.
Everyone has bad days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has good days. What do you do whenever a day is particularly challenging for you in your recovery?
Yeah, I mean, life isn't all sunshine and rainbows today just because I'm 10 years sober and, you know, I got a decent life and a house and a car and all that. Like, I still have my days. My daughters are getting old now. They kind of know about that. They've Googled. They can Google my name and, you know, they're learning things. My soon-to-be 6-year-old, her name's Fiona. She'll stop dead in her tracks. I might be walking around the house, you know, grumpy and, you know, maybe cursing a little bit under my breath, and she'll stop and she'll put her hands on her hips and she'll go, "Relax, Sergeant." And it'll take me right out of whatever I'm doing and remind me that I need to pick up the phone because I'm not good. I need to talk to another veteran. I need to talk to somebody in recovery. And I sort of have this wellness chart, right? So there's certain things that I need to do on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And if I'm off, because I know when I'm off, if I pull that list out and I do a self-inventory and go, okay, I haven't done this in 2 weeks, haven't done this today than I normally do, I'm going to find the answer on that piece of paper and say, hey, get back to your routine, get back to the things that make you well. It's all about self-care, man.
Sounds like having a structure and a routine really helps you.
Absolutely.
Do you think that that's pretty common for military veterans?
Yeah, I mean, it's so ingrained in us, man. We're used to routine. We're used to getting up. We're used to doing this. We're used to showering at this time. It's when my routine's off, I'm off, man. My wife will be the first one to tell you that.
Sure. This is something I've come across only anecdotally, but do you think that there's similarities between structures in the military and in the criminal justice system as well? Like you mentioned it with the judge, and I hadn't thought of it like that, but I definitely think about it being incarcerated.
Sure. I mean, you know, even out here, if you're, you know, free to come and go as you please, like if you're in a court system, you know, as I mentioned earlier, it's definitely quasi-military. But I mean, in terms of prison, I mean, that's military, man. That's, you know, you're getting online, you're getting counted, you're getting told when to shower, you know, when to use the bathroom, when to eat, like very much like military. You know, there's a pecking order, there's a chain of command, there's, you know, even amongst the prisoners. You know, forget about the staff and the correction officers. You know, there's a hierarchy amongst prisoners too that you live by. So it's very, very similar to the military.
You mentioned the military police.
Yeah.
You were involved in that?
Yep.
Are there similarities, differences between those systems?
You mean as far
civilian versus military policing?
Yeah, well, the difference between the military police that I was a part of, like there's two types of military police in the military. There's the ones that stand at the gate and check your ID when you come in. I was attached to 2nd Military Police Battalion. We did convoy security and POW handling and riot control, which is, you know, I would say you don't get too much of that in the civilian world. So it's very, very similar. Again, there's a pecking order, a rank structure, a chain of command, but, you know, slightly different.
Maybe if we have more time another day, we'll talk more about your experiences as an MP. Tell me about your tattoos, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so my tattoos, Tufel Hunden. This is, I don't know if you've ever heard the term devil dog. That's what they call Marines. They got that name from the Germans. When the Marines were coming up on the beach and fighting, you know, they coined the phrase. The Germans started calling them Tufel Hunden, which means devil dogs. So that's a sort of a term of endearment is the way we took it. You know, it's a badge of honor for Marines that we're considered devil dogs because of the way we fight. So, this is the Tun Tavern, which is, a lot of people don't know, the Marine Corps was started in Philadelphia in a bar in this tavern, November 10th, 1775. And you know, being from Philadelphia, I mean, it's, for me, it's, you know, it's home in so many ways. And then I have Semper Fi, Semper Fidelis across my wrist, which means always faithful. It's another Marine Corps motto. And this is a exact replica of the truck that I spent a lot of time in Iraq. This was actually done from a picture I had. As you can see, the 50 cal on top, and that's what I manned. I manned a 50 cal machine gun while I was over there. So, this was kind of my home when I was over there. There was no tents we slept in these Humvees during the invasion, like for months. So that was my home.
Do you have memorials on his tattoos as well?
Not necessarily memorials. Like I have my my rank. I don't have any memorial tattoos.
Definitely service connected.
Service connected, yeah, for sure.
Thank you for that. So before I ask a couple of concluding questions, is there anything throughout the interview that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked? Take your time.
Yeah, I think that it's important to know that veterans treatment courts, they don't cost society a lot of money. People think, oh, it must cost a ton to get these people through that system. It actually saves taxpayers money. Number one, because of the recidivism rate. Veterans courts have, in Philadelphia, we have a less than 10% recidivism rate. If you go down the hallway in one of those courtrooms, it's upwards around 52%. So you're saving money that way, saving taxpayers. All these people that work in this court, you got a judge who sits here one day a week. He's already on salary. You're not pulling him away from anything. You're not paying him extra money. The DA already is on salary for the city, so you're not giving them an extra stipend. Public defender. These are all people that already have jobs. The other 4 days of the week, they're doing what they do in their other courtrooms. So you're not spending a ton of money to help these veterans. It doesn't cost the taxpayers a bunch of money. It's saving money. People need to realize that. It's saving lives. And at the end of the day, everybody cares about almighty friggin' dollar, right? So let's be real. This is saving money. All these politicians and all these people out here are all worried about money, right? We're worried about lives. They're worried about money. So if you're out there, we're saving you money. Listen to that, all right? We're saving you money and we're saving lives. So money's important to you. The lives are important to us.
I usually ask this to veterans because I think it's important for people to understand what people in the military go through, and it doesn't have to be related to your time in the military, but it can be. What are the best and what are the worst aspects of humanity that you've experienced or witnessed? And you can, best or worst, it's up to you.
Say that again.
What are the best and worst aspects of humanity that you've experienced or witnessed?
Are you talking about in general throughout my life?
Yeah.
I think the best that I've ever witnessed is, the sacrifice that military members make for one another. You know what I mean? It's, you could be from totally two different towns. Your skin color is different from the person next to you. None of that matters when you're in the fight of it. You know what I mean? It's, when you see a young man or woman literally throw their lives in front of something for another person, that's the best humanity I've ever seen. I mean, that's the best that society offers. It doesn't matter your religion, your race, none of that. It matters about protecting the person next to you. And that's what you find in our military.
What do you want people to learn from you based on your experiences?
I want
take away for you is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Well, I think people, if you learn anything from my story, is that no matter how bad it gets, no matter how low you can be below rock bottom. As long as you're breathing, it can only get better. Can't get no worse. You have no control over yesterday because it's already gone. And you have no control over tomorrow because it ain't here yet. So just do your best for that day, for that particular moment, to get a little bit better. Nothing's going to happen overnight. You're not going to have everything you want, but you will have everything you need. So just hang tough and stick with it because shit will get better.
You've mentioned your family several times, your daughters. If they happen to watch this sometime, someday, what message would you have for them?
Man.
You may already give them that message daily, but
Yeah. Just be a good person.
yeah,
That's all it takes. I mean, if you wake up and you decide that you're going to make another person better today, then you're going to have a good day.
that's awesome.
Mm.
Well, I want to thank you for not only your service, but to the nation, to your community, to other humans. But thank you for telling me your story and for participating in the project. It's a lot to me.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. Thanks for, it's all about awareness, man. That's why I'm sitting here, and you're on a mission, and I like it, man. I appreciate it.